One of the all-time great series as Australia earns the right to defend its World Test Championship title. How will Virat Kohli and Rohit Sharma reflect on their Border-Gavaskar Trophy? We get the thoughts of Michael Clarke, Simon Katich and Aaron Finch. And we look ahead to the Tour of Sri Lanka. Let's go around the wicket. What an incredible series. Australia win it 3-1. I'm Nerily Meadows, Aaron Finch alongside me, and former Aussie captain Michael Clarke joins us right off the top of the show. Pup, how would you sum it up?
Great result for the Aussies after being 1-0 down. What a series win. Look, I think in general, it was a wonderful series to watch. I think it was exactly what Test cricket needed, and certainly in this country. And I think the Australian fans and Indian fans showed up and showed their support for both teams. It was tough cricket, ultra competitive, some really hard batting wickets as well. I think you can probably say the fast bowlers, certainly Bumrah and Pat Cummins, and Scotty Boland as well, add him to that list, just were unbelievable. So I think a wonderful Test series. Like I say, exactly what we needed in this country to get Australian fans back loving Test match cricket.
Finchy, a lot of people think that if Bumrah was fit, then India maybe wins that fifth Test at the SCG. You've got a bit of a different theory on this, though.
Well, I said before the series started that Australia were prepared to play the long game with Jasprit Bumrah. They wanted to make him bowl over and over and over, just make him coming back for one more spell, bowl another 3, 4, 5 overs, and in the end it worked. They broke him in the end. So for me, they played that long game, they won. Had he bowled in the last innings in Sydney, would Australia have got over the line? I think they still just get over the line, but it would have been a lot more difficult than what it was.
One man carrying too much.
Don't know.
You reckon that they?
I don't know.
You reckon he bowls India a victory?
I reckon Australia were probably. I reckon India were probably 20 runs short. I reckon 180 lead with Bumrah in the team. I think India are home. I think Bumrah is that good. I really do. And I think the other thing, you're 100% right around the amount of overs he had to bowl. But I just think it's because he's so much better than the other bowlers they had in his team. And conditions weren't conducive for spin bowling as well.
Pup, you mentioned the pitches throughout the series, but the SCG in particular, your home ground, what did you make of that pitch?
Yeah, you know what? The SCG is my favourite ground in the world. It is my home ground, and I hate saying this out loud, but that's the worst pitch I've ever seen in Sydney. I didn't think it was a good cricket wicket. You know, balls, not just going up off the surface, but also shooting, low on the end at the end of day 2. I didn't think it was a good cricket wicket, and of course, Australia wins, so I'm not complaining. But if we went to India and played and they produced a wicket like that in regards to a raging turner and the game was over in 2.5 days, I think all Australian cricket fans would be kicking up a stink. So I think we just have to be a little bit careful as well now in and around that. When it happens, we go to different countries and they produce conditions that are conducive for them. I think we need to bite our tongue, because these wickets in general throughout the whole summer were really tough for batting and were great for fast bowling, especially against the brand new ball. But Sydney was extreme. I didn't think it was a good Test wicket.
Pup, you said there, just to go back a little bit, talk about Jasprit Bumrah, you said that if he had a bowl, you think India would have won. Is that the best fast bowling performance you've ever seen in this country from a visiting quick?
You know what? I think so. The thing I've thought about Bumrah after, the series finished, and I'm sitting and just thinking about his performances, I actually think he's the best fast bowler ever across all 3 formats. Now, I know a lot of great fast bowlers, Curtly Ambrose, Glenn McGrath, these guys didn't get to play 2020 cricket. So I'm not talking about those guys. But in regards to anybody that has played all 3 formats, I think he might be the best ever.
Yep.
Like he's actually that good in any conditions. That's what makes him great. Any conditions, any format. This guy's a freak.
Sonny Gavaskar, there was a big controversial moment, the fact that he was left out of the presentation alongside his great mate, Alan Border. Pup, you feel pretty passionately about this, that they got it wrong.
I just think Cricket Australia missed a trick. Now, I know a lot of people don't know that it was planned before the series started that if India were to win, Sunny would present the trophy. If Australia were to win, Alan Border would present the trophy. So it wasn't a surprise to those two guys. But to me, it just doesn't make sense. Like, they're both there. No matter who won, in my opinion, they both should have walked out. They both should have been on stage. They both should have presented the trophy. I think we're very lucky to have both AB and Sunny in the country, commentating at the right time. You don't get that very often. Both legends of the game that the trophy's named after, are still around and are in the country at the same time. So I just think we missed a trick there. I think it sounds to me that it obviously offended Sonny as well, and I can understand why. I think they both should have been on that stage presenting that trophy, no matter who won.
Was it disrespectful?
Yeah, and probably just an oversight. You're obviously looking down the track and saying, well, whoever wins that, whoever's named after the trophy, that they should present it. But like Pup said, totally agree. Both should have been there. Cricket Australia definitely missed a trick there.
Pup, Rohit Sharma, the India captain, decided to opt out, in his words, of that final test in Sydney. You believe it could have been handled a little differently in the build-up, though, rather than just going on Star Sports India and explaining his decision?
Yeah, look, I think Rolt spoke very well, but I'm still a little confused why he didn't front the press conference like the captain normally does the day before the test and say exactly what he said on Star before the test match started. I don't know why the coach went. And maybe they're trying to keep it a secret until the toss of the coin. But yeah, I think a lot more questions than answers throughout that whole last test match from my perspective in regards to India's behind closed doors inside that change room. A lot of unknowns. Like I'm still unsure. Rohit stood down for a test match. Does that mean he's retired, or does that mean he's not going to play Test cricket again? I know India's next Test series is 5 Test matches against England in England, so conditions are going to be tough for batting there. Is he going to go back and play first class cricket to make runs? Are they going to judge Champions Trophy and one day cricket to get him back into the team? I'm unsure about a lot of things at the moment in and around, Rohit's decision. Great decision if he didn't think he was good enough to play or wasn't in form. I understand that. But what does it actually mean for Rohit Sharma, Indian Test captain, moving forward? I don't know.
Well, there's a lot of secrecy around the whole Indian campaign out here. They were locking down training sessions, putting big tarps up. So for me, the one question as well is Ravi Ashwin. There hasn't been anything really come out to say why he decided to retire at that time. Was it something that was happening behind the scenes that forced him into that decision, especially with Melbourne and Sydney, which have traditionally been two venues that India would play two spinners as well. So, a lot more questions than answers, like you said, Pup.
From one captain to another, Pat Cummins, Australia now hold the World Test Championship trophy. They have the opportunity to go back-to-back. They hold the Ashes. They hold the Border-Gavaskar Trophy for the first time in a decade. They're one-day World Cup champions after winning that title in India, the toughest of conditions. But where does Pat Cummins sit at the moment in amongst our great Australian captains?
I think this team sits very high on that pedestal. There's no doubt about it. As you just mentioned, there's all those things. There's not too much they haven't achieved. I think they haven't won in India, and they've drawn the series over in England, but haven't won in England. So that would be their only two challenges. But they've achieved just about everything. So they should certainly be praised. And Paddy, captain of the team now, no doubt should be praised for that as well. I think they've done exceptionally well. I think the one thing we're seeing with Paddy is him grow tactically on the field. I think he's a wonderful leader. I think he's a good leader of men. A lot of his teammates obviously respect him, and he is. He's a great guy. But I think the growth and the challenge with Paddy is now, I guess backing himself to not control senior players, but have the courage to, tell a Nathan Lyon that I want you to bowl over the wicket, even though he feels like he wants to bowl around, or change the field, or put an extra catcher in, or be a bit more aggressive, or be a bit more defensive. Just have that courage to continue to back himself and not be afraid to, have that conversation with a senior player, someone that has played 100 test matches or been around for a certain amount of time. And you know what? I think we saw that. I don't know Paddy's influence around selection. I know his relationship with Mitchell Marsh is a great one. They're great friends. So for them to drop Mitch Marsh for that last test match was a big call. But they did that in the best interest of the team. So like I say, things like that, I think Paddy's becoming a lot more comfortable in that role. And I think you can see it out on the field as well.
Pup, you captain Nathan Lyon a lot. You would have had those conversations about him trying to change tactically. Easier said than done, mate.
Yeah, it is, and especially when someone's been successful. The hardest one for me was playing with Warney at Hampshire. Like if I had an idea or wanted to, I said, Matt, I reckon you should go around the wicket for a couple of whatever it was. Try and tell Shane Warne that it's not an easy thing to do, but that's what leadership is. Like it's team first. You feel something in your stomach, and as a captain, you go with it, especially tactically. So I think it's just about having the courage to communicate with that senior bowler. And sometimes, like all of us, we've all got a boss. Sometimes we've got to be told, even if we don't want to, if we think it's best, if we think you can get somebody out, you think you wouldn't need an extra catcher or a bat pad offside or a second slip, whatever it is. You're right, Finch. It is easier said than done, but I think Paddy's getting there. I think his growth as a leader is very clear for everyone to see.
Pup, what I hear there is that there's still room for improvement, which is a scary proposition for the rest of the world.
Well,
just quickly,
I know, what a great problem to have.
The two-tiered system has been brought up in the Test world. Do you like the idea of a two-tier structure?
I haven't thought enough about it, but not off the top of my head, no. There is clearly two tiers. Unfortunately, I hate to say it when it comes to Test cricket. There's the big three, India, Australia and England, and there's the rest of the countries fighting their backside off to stay in Test cricket. So I think more has to be done. I hate to say it, but I feel like where life is and society is, generally money is the answer. I think, we've got to find a way. Those big three cricketing nations need to find a way to keep the other countries wanting to play Test cricket, learning Test cricket from a young age and competing in Test cricket. That's why I guess I'm, so happy with what we've just seen in Australia with this summer. The last 2 summers of Test cricket here in Australia, I don't think have been anywhere near as entertaining as what we've just seen. And I think the fans showed that by showing up this summer. So I think for the other cricketing nations around the world, the ICC, first and foremost, and then the big three countries have to invest, have to maybe sacrifice some of our own money. We have to do as much as we can to keep them not only playing Test cricket, but competing at the highest level.
Michael Clarke, thank you very much for your time as always. We will see you again in another week after a wonderful series.
Thanks, guys.
We're going to talk more about it though, because Simon Katich is coming up. We're going to hone in on Team India, particularly Virat Kohli and Rohit Sharma. Don't go in.
My conversation to him was just around whether he's okay. Clearly, the way that India celebrated that was quite intimidating. I mean, it's clearly within the laws of the game, within the rules and regulations, so there's been no charges laid. But, to have an opposition obviously swarm the non-striker like that was, we've got a duty of care to our player to make sure he's okay.
It's a tough sport played by tough men. You can't be that soft. As simple as it can get. I don't think so there was anything intimidating about it. I think that's just, he had no right to be talking to Jasprit Bumrah when Usman Khwaja was taking time. He had no right and no business to be involved with Jasprit Bumrah. That was the job of the umpire, probably the guy who was batting at the end.
Sam Konstas certainly delivered the entertainment in his 2 tests this summer. The 19-year-old Simon Katich joins us now. I did enjoy that Usman Khawaja said about Sam Konstas, he's the most arrogant yet endearing teammate I've ever played with. Pretty much sums it up. Kato, thanks for your time. Where do you sit on all of this? Should India have been sanctioned, or did Sammy just start it all when it's fair game?
Well, I tend to agree with what Andrew McDonald said first up. I mean, it happened in Melbourne. That's where the intimidation happened. I mean, Virat Kohli should have been banned for the physical contact. So it started there. But in Sydney, I didn't feel like the Indians intimidated Konstas because I think, he dished it out first to Bumrah late on day one. And as soon as you do that, there's an unwritten rule in cricket, you're fair game. So he put a target on his back and they had every right to fire back, particularly someone as well respected as Bumrah with the series he was having.
What do you think, Finchy?
Yeah, a little bit with Cato. I mean, Andrew McDonald's just looking out for his young player and making sure that he's okay. And I don't think that at any point he said, well, you can't do that. And Gautam Gambhir, he was as punchy as ever again, which he was right throughout the series. I think when you're in that situation, Sam Konstas said later on that he regretted getting entangled with Bumrah on that first night in Sydney. So lesson learnt for the young kid, and he'll be better for it.
How do you think he's going to go in the Ashes next year, assuming he plays Cato? And if he was an Englishman, do you think we'd hate him?
Yeah, there'd probably be a little bit of that. But I think in terms of the way he disrupted the Indians, I think he achieved his goal. And I think, he's only 19 years of age. Everyone says that he doesn't play like this for New South Wales. So now it's just about a matter of him trying to strike the right balance between the controlled aggression, which we saw in Melbourne with the ramp shots and charging down the wicket, and then managing that with batting normally when the conditions or the game situation dictate that to happen. And let's not forget, he's only a kid and he's only learning, right from the word go at test level. So I think the biggest issue he's got now, he's put a bit of a target on his back, and whether he can handle that pressure from here on in at his age, only time will tell.
Learning on the job in Test cricket against one of the best fast bowlers we've ever seen in this country, Jasprit Bumrah, that's one thing. And again, what I love about Sam Konstas after the series, he's spoken to a reporter and he said, I just got caught up in the moment. My eyes started spinning. I'm out there in front of 90,000 people. It's not easy. And any time that you're in that situation, your senses are overloaded. And he probably got that slightly wrong with the attack, especially in Sydney. But overall, he'll be better for the run. I think going forward, playing in Sri Lanka, we'll see a more complete Test cricketer, back to the fundamentals. He's got a good technique to fall back on. It's not just all walking out there and trying to ramp and slog him out of the park.
From the young gun to the veteran, you mentioned Simon Katich. You thought Virat Kohli should have been banned for his bump on Sam Konstas. How do you think Kohli will reflect upon his behaviour this tour?
Look, there's no doubt he's been a modern great of the game in all formats. But I think you have to question what sort of headspace he's in on this tour to be doing that, making physical contact in Melbourne. And then even the other unsavoury incident in Sydney with the sandpaper reference there with the pockets. So, I mean, that in itself, there was no need for that. That's old news. So in a way, I think he's tarnished his reputation somewhat on this tour, on and off the field.
What do you think, Finchy?
Oh, it was just a level of frustration. I said last week that it seemed as though he wanted to find conflict and confrontation, and that's where he generally plays his best cricket. So he just went overboard on this tour. The bump, that was above and beyond anything that I've seen on a field, and then the sandpaper, unnecessary. But overall, I think he was trying to find something to ignite a fire in himself that just wasn't up to it.
The Aussies obviously did what they did in South Africa, but I've got to say I felt for Cam Bancroft, the fact that he's in hospital with a broken scapula and a broken nose after that incident with Daniel Sams, and then it gets brought up yet again by Virat Kohli out there in the middle. But from a cricketing perspective, Cato, you know Virat Kohli really well. You coached him at RCB in the IPL. The form, can he get back to his best, or is his Test career behind him, do you think?
Look, he's too good a player not to be able to find his best. I know there was a lot of questions around Steve Smith, who's another modern day great, and he found it, got the 100 in Brisbane and then backed it up in Melbourne with a superb ton. So I think that the issue he's got at the moment is his greatest strength, which was putting pressure on the bowlers and being an aggressive player. It's now become his weakness, because at 36 years of age, he's going to have to adapt his game now and not play like he did in his 20s when he was in peak fitness and peak reflexes. I mean, his fitness is still first class. There's no doubt about that. But you have to question at 36 whether he's still got the same reflexes and game plan. And we saw it in this series, consistently nicking off, letting his hands get away from his body and just wanting to play forward all the time. And the bowlers were able to read that. He needs to have a different game plan moving forward if he wants to get back to his best.
The coach, Gautam Gambhir, they get swept by New Zealand in India and then lose for the first time in 10 years in the Border-Gavaskar Trophy. Is he under the pump, do you think, as new coach?
Oh, absolutely. And I think the frustration after the Melbourne Test match, that suggested that he was feeling the pressure as much as anyone. So anytime you lose in your home conditions, although he's only new into the head coaching role, questions are asked. And then you've been so successful in Australia on 2 previous tours, to then come here, win the first Test, everyone be up and about and almost forget the New Zealand series. That was like, right, now we can go forward. And then they were really ordinary after that first test. They dominated Australia in Perth, but then they played ordinary cricket for the rest. Australia just dominated them. It would have been 4-1 had there not been rain in Brisbane.
Bumrah was the captain in Perth. He was obviously the captain in Sydney after Rohit Sharma stepped down. What do you think from here on in, Cato? Who should be the captain, the full-time captain of the Test team of India?
Oh, without a doubt, in my mind, it has to be Bumrah. I think we saw the spirit that India played with, particularly in day one in Perth, and for the rest of that Test match when they were rolled for 150 on day one, and that series or that Test in particular could have easily gone the other way. But we saw him lead the charge with the ball, knock over the top order, get Australia in a huge amount of pressure. And then we also saw the senior players go with him. Virat Kohli was full of energy and spirit in the field late on day one. And I think he's at the peak of his powers. I just think he has to be captain moving forward, because when you look at Rohit's, it was a disjointed campaign for Rohit, and it certainly wasn't easy from a batting perspective coming up against this Australian attack in these conditions. But he averaged just over 6, and the warning signs are there for him because it's been brewing for the last probably 6 months with his form, and he's 37 now. So I think Gambier's got some tough questions to ask in these next few months, and I think there'll be questions asked of him, but also think that this team's in transition and he's going to have to make some tough calls in the next few months.
Simon Katich firing on all cylinders on Around the Wicket, and he's not going anywhere because I'm going to ask you guys the tough questions after this short break. Who makes the Aussie 11 for the Tour of Sri Lanka and next year's Ashes? Don't go anywhere.
In terms of Sri Lanka, we'll wait and see. Becky's hanging on at the moment, so we'll play it by ear, but I think, most likely I might struggle to get over there.
Assuming that Pat Cummins won't be there for Sri Lanka, Simon Katich, I've asked you to put together your 11. You've stuck with Sam Konstas opening overseas, and you've decided that Travis Head will be your captain with Kuhnemann coming in. Tell me the reasoning.
Look, I think the young kid deserves the opportunity, and he's only going to get better by playing. He's not going to get better, I think, and get used to those conditions because they are so foreign. So I think the more experience they get into him now, particularly given that this series now, the World Test Championships tied up, Australia have got into that, qualified. So I just think unless they want Travis Head desperately to open, that could change things and maybe just rejig the top of the order. But the reason I picked Travis Head as captain is purely because I think, his last couple of years, he's shown outstanding leadership just in terms of the way he's gone about it under pressure. And even like with this drinking ban recently that he put on to himself, the discipline he's shown there to prioritise this Test series, I think he deserves the opportunity to grow his leadership skills in this series.
Loving the photos of you guys with your baggy greens handed over as well as we look at these squads. Aaron Finch, you've decided on a different captain in the absence of Pat Cummins, and Travis Head at the top of the order.
Yeah, I've gone with Travis Head at the top of the order with Sam Konstas and Usman Khawaja at 3, and I think that's purely based on conditions to try and get off to flies. As soon as that new ball the shine's off the new ball, batting becomes incredibly difficult. That's why I've got the extra left-hander of Khawaja, very good player of spin, at 3, and Steve Smith captain. I think slightly different to Cato. Travis Head's been brilliant over the last couple of years by just being himself and playing normally through the middle order. So I wouldn't want to burden him with any more leadership. He can continue to be vice captain and do that role really well, and Steve Smith gets the nod.
Inglis, Hanscom, Maxwell, Zampa, a few names that have been brought up that you've both left out there. But I want to have an eye on the Ashes next year. I've put you both on the spot. I know it's a long way away and there's a couple of tests in Sri Lanka, World Test Championship final, and then 3 tests against the West Indies. But Simon Katich, you think Cameron Green, fit and firing, could miss out altogether?
Yeah, only because I think they've still got this conundrum with the opening partnership. They changed it earlier in the year or in early 2024 in New Zealand with Smith moving up and then Green slotting into 4. And I agreed with that at the time because I think Green's best spot in the batting order moving forward will be at number 4. It's where he's dominated first-class cricket for WA. But I think he's just got to have to prove his fitness in these next 6 months or so, pile on the runs. And the one that's probably under most pressure is Usman Khawaja. He's 38 now. He's going to be 39 by the time the Ashes rolls around in December later this year. So I just think it's out of those two in my mind. And Khawaja, I thought, was much better at the back end of this Border-Gavaskar series once Konstas was at the top of the order, taking some pressure off him.
Finchy, you're the opposite. You're letting 3 veterans go ahead of the Ashes.
Yeah, I just feel as though it is a long time away, and when you're not playing a huge amount of cricket in between, it's always going to be tough. So I've actually found a spot for Cameron Green, and it's at the expense of Usman Khawaja with Marnus going to the top. But Jai Richardson, the one down there, he's who I think can take this next generation of Australian quicks forward. So the ability for him to get the opportunity to bowl with Pat Cummins and Mitchell Starc and Nathan Lyon and form that new attack, I think is really crucial. And I just think with Josh Hazlewood's niggles over the last couple of years, he's been playing really sparingly. And Scott Boland, that's a big call as well. He'll be 36, 37 by then. So I just think the way that Jai bowls complements that other attack as well.
Just quickly, has Mitch Marsh played his last test?
Well, I think so. I think it'll be really difficult for Mitch to get back into the side now. There's not a huge amount of cricket left in this summer to force a case with Cameron Green coming back expected early in March. So for me, it'll be unlikely.
Simon Katich, thank you as always for your thoughts. We appreciate you being a part of the team on Around the Wicket. Until next time, don't go anywhere though, because Aaron Finch is going to take on the short stuff next. Time to take on the short stuff. Aaron Finch, is this the best catch you've ever seen?
No, it's not. For two reasons. One, it's Glenn Maxwell. The other reason, Jordan Silk's catch in the Big Bash at the Gabby a few years ago, best I've ever seen.
The nervous 9,999. Do you feel for Steve Smith with the legends waiting with the presentation?
Absolutely. He was stiff. That was a ball that reared up. Just getting a lot of people out. So feel for him, but he'll get it in goal.
Who's happier to see the back of who? Aussie against Bumrah or Virat against Boland?
Both. They're both very, very happy to see the end of this series. Fast bowlers dominated right throughout. I'm not sure that they'll ever face each other again either.
Should the Smith-Labuschagne catch have been given out?
100% that was out. I don't know why there wasn't a replay from behind. That would have told the whole story. Fingers definitely under it. Out.
Dan Christian has made a comeback to the Big Bash and he was pretty impressive as well at the ripe old age of 41. Are you sure you're done?
150 million% I'm done.
I like it too much sitting alongside me.
Absolutely. Why wouldn't you?
Thanks for joining us on Around the Wicket. We'll see you again next week.